This is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories, and I'm Dr. Ron Cross. I hope this episode finds all of you well, taking care of your family, and of course, practicing good, safe social distancing. We are approaching the end of the year, and we're thinking about the possibilities of the new year. And I got to thinking about that as well. And I oftentimes reflect upon my career, and I'm kind of pacing toward the end of my career, and many, if not most of you, are kind of gearing up now for your career to be all that you can be. So I thought, what could I share with you as we begin to celebrate the new year that would be helpful to you, not only in the new year, but throughout the years that come that are presently in front of you. And so what we're going to be talking about today is the idea of future proofing. The title of the episode is Future Proofing Your Career. And we're going to do it in three parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Those will be 3 different episodes. So part 1 is going to be talking about future proofing your career, getting ready, okay, to be all that you can be. And that's what we hope anyone that strives to take care of their family and to do well in their life, we hope and pray that they're going to be all that they can be by always doing the right thing and taking care of business today and not putting it off till tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to share a screen. I did something a little different this time. I created a PowerPoint, and I'm hopeful that it is helpful in getting the idea across. So we will go ahead. And while I'm trying to bring it up, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It will help me with that YouTube algorithm. And if I've said something in the past or I say something today that is helpful to you in your career and to help you with your family, taking care of your family, I should say, then let me help others as well. And you can do that by sharing my content. All right. So getting ready to meet the future. This is part 1 of a 3-part discussion on future-proofing your career. Before we get started, I'll tell you just a little bit of a story that I shared recently in another episode, and it was about a college friend of mine. We were probably, I think, juniors, maybe, going to school, taking some of those physics classes and engineering classes we were required to think. And we'd always gather at the student union in between classes to drink coffee and to share ideas about the material that we were going over and things of that nature. And so we walked upon one of our friends, and he was diligently, he had this fan fold paper, right? Turn a page, there's another page, you know. And he was diligently drawing boxes with connected arrows and things like that. And there was writing in all these boxes. And so I said, John, what are you doing? And he said something that at first I was a little amused at. But the more I got into my career and thinking back on him, I thought he was a brilliant young man. He said, in answer to our questions, I am flowcharting out my career. Flowcharting out your career. You haven't even begun it. He goes, well, yeah, but I want to know the steps I'm going to need to take as I go forward in my career so that it will prepare me to do all the necessary steps so that I'm able to achieve. And so if nothing else, I'm not wanting you to flowchart out your career, but it might be a pretty good idea. But if nothing else, maybe I can say a few things in this discussion on getting ready to meet the future by future-proofing your career. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. There are 7 bullets we're going to talk about. But before we go there, we're going to talk a little bit about what is future-proofing. Now, here's the formal definition. Future-proofing is the process of anticipating the future and developing methods of minimizing the effects of shocks and stresses of future events. And of course, those shocks and stresses are on you, on your career. And sometimes the shock just blows people away, or the stress becomes too much, they just crumble in, right? So future-proof is something that is done to ensure that your product or your process is scalable and amendable or adjustable, right? So as you go into future, you're going to encounter some things that's going to drive you to change. And we're going to get back to that in just a moment. So that's the definition of future-proof. Now here's my definition of future-proofing. Future-proofing is the act of designing for and the minimizing and accommodating of the impact of change without having to start over again. Automobile manufacturers are like that. They design a platform that they can use for several generations going forward, and every year's new model is simply a spiraling in of some improvements and some new functions, and that's the next year's model. Only once in a while we get somebody like Elon Musk that will come out with a Tesla, the car that is purely runs on electricity, on batteries, and has a range that is compatible with a tank of gasoline. So when we look at these sorts of things in terms of future proofing, we want to put things in place in our processes, in our procedures, and even in our designs, our product designs, that will allow them to easily be adaptable to changes that may come next year or the year after that. So that's what that means. So what does all this mean in terms of future-proofing your career? Well, then, this is the act of anticipating and preparing for change in the work environment such that you will have continued employment and success in your career. In other words, you will remain relevant and not obsolete right out of the workforce. Now, the last two were my definitions, okay? So future-proofing your career is the ability to stay relevant going forward, and not only stay relevant, but to thrive and achieve the interim goals and the ultimate goal of your career, whatever that may be. Some of you may want to be the best engineer or the best plumber or electrician that you can be, or the best accountant. Others may want to get into executive management. Whatever your career is, you want to make sure that you're doing those things along the way to future-proof it. Now, how do we get ready for that? Well, that's what these 7 bullets, if you think about them, read over them, apply them to your life, perhaps they will be like milestones or guidance posts that will point you in the right direction to ensure that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so 7 simple things to recognize and do. First, we recognize that change is constant. I've said this many times in many of the episodes that I've created. Heraclitus said it somewhere around, 300, 400 BC. He said the only constant is change. And of course, he's been right ever since, right? Because what is right and proper for today, that works for us today, will not be so tomorrow. What was proper and needed for business in the 70s and 80s was not so in the 90s and 2000s. So again, what is going on today and how we do business today and the tools and resources that we use will not be relevant to some point in the future. So if you don't change with the pace of change, if you don't evolve and adapt, and we're going to come back to that with the pace of change, you're going to, of course, obsolete right out of the workforce. How about number 2? Practice lifelong learning and critical thinking. Now notice, this is a conjunction. It has and in it. And what that simply means is that if it were a statement of truth, both parts of the and must be true for the overall and statement to be true. So how are you going to get ready to future-proof your career? You're going to practice lifelong learning and not do any critical thinking? I don't think that's going to work out very well for you. You're not going to practice lifelong learning, but you're going to do some critical thinking. I think you're going to fail, right? Or not achieve the things that you want to achieve in your life. So this conjunction of something that you must do must be done in total in both parts, okay? So we practice lifelong learning. That means we're continually learning new things so that we're better prepared to see what comes our way or anticipate the threats that are out there. We practice critical thinking so that we can gather in the facts, connect the dots, and understand, is it a threat or an opportunity? Is it easily done, or will it take more steps than we're presently able to do, or will we need a partner? You see how all that works. Practice lifelong learning and critical thinking, and you will do well for your family and your career and for the company. Number 3, understand and master the problem-solving process. See, it's not sufficient, it's not enough to do number 2. It's not enough to do 1. It's not enough to do 1 and 2. You have to really understand how to attack a problem and get to the root cause. Many times companies spin their wheels working and solving problems that are not problems, but they're symptoms of the root cause. So if we strive to develop skills and understanding and how to take on a problem-solving quest, we have a problem out there. We need to conquer it for the good of the program, for the good of the company, for the good of our family, for the good of our career. We need to have a methodical approach. There's no shotgun approach or serendipity. A shotgun approach says we're going to scatter shot and hopefully we're going to hit the right process and everything will work out. That's kind of like depending on your retirement by playing the lottery, right? For millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people, it really doesn't work out, right? So the odds are not in your favor. So we want to take on the ability to solve these problems with a methodical approach that allows us to delve down into the problem itself and understand what the root cause is. We can throw away the symptoms because if we can get to the root cause and fix the root cause, the symptoms will take care of themselves, right? So there are methodical processes that are taught out there. They're out there online, they're in seminars and other places. Even your place of business may give you a training in problem solving. There's one class that I took that I thought was worth its weight in whatever gold the company paid for me to take it. And it was a Kepner-Tregoe process for problem solving and identifying how to simplify processes and get rid of non-value added steps and go to the value added steps. But you see, if you can't identify what the root causes are, you can't create a plan. And if you're not thinking clearly about the steps that you need to do to get to that root cause and solve it, then you may be doing some non-value added steps. And that does nobody any good because you're not making any headway. You're simply that wheel laying on its side, turning round and round and round, and you're not making any progress. And as time goes by, the company is suffering or the program is suffering. So I would say that read the books on how to solve problems, how to approach solving a problem. Go look up Kepner-Tregoe. I have nothing to do with the company that came up with it or teaches the seminars in it, but I think so very highly of that type of approach that I do recommend it. And master it, read it, work through it, apply it to some of your own problems. Maybe it's in your personal life, maybe it's in your professional life, but get some experience with it. And I think it will serve you well your entire career. So that was number 3. Number 4, stay informed. You don't do anybody any good by being surprised, right? Being surprised, sometimes there's good things that you're surprised about. Oh, I got that check in the mail I wasn't expecting, right? And then surprises can be very bad things. Wow, you mean the customer's not accepting the product we just sold off? Why? You have to stay informed. Now, how do you stay informed? You learn and understand and know your company's processes and procedures. You're thinking about them and turning them over in your mind, looking at ways to improve them and apply the number 3 step, right? You're reading trade journals. You're looking at professional societies, journals and magazines that they put out or their websites. They have case studies out there that where people have applied their techniques and their principles and they've been very, very successful, right? So by staying informed, you'll recognize the threat that's out there. By staying informed, if something flits by, you'll have time to understand because you're informed. That's an opportunity and it'll allow you to chase after it, right? Hopefully you'll catch it. But that's the whole point of staying informed. The more information you have, the more aware you become, the greater ability you have to put the pieces together, the puzzle together, solve the puzzle, and add value to your companies. Now, number 5 is kind of related to number 4, right? Look for global trends and new developments. Now, what that means is simply this. There may be global trends where some jobs are phasing out. And we'll talk about that in step 6. But you may see on the horizon out there, there's a trend coming. You know, back in the late 80s and early 90s, people saw the advent of the internet. There was a white paper that was put out around 93, 94 about what the internet could be. And really, it's been prophetic because the internet has been that and more, and still more to come. So the point I'm trying to make here is you're surveying the horizon, you're looking at the possible threats out there, because the threats may be that the job that you're in is going to phase out because it may be automated. So what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and wait until the job gets phased out? Uh, I told a story in an earlier episode where my brother was developing a pick and place machine. He wrote the software, developed the mechanism, the hardware, and basically what it was pretty much to stuff the parts into a watch. I think it was a watch, might have been a PC board. And as he was developing that device, the people that were doing it manually were over there on the manufacturing line. And every now and then they would glance over to where he was. And when he first started, when he made the software with the hardware, there was some trouble, but it kind of worked. The next 2 or 3 days, it began keeping pace with those workers. And the week after that, it was doing the work much, much, much faster. So what were they seeing? They were seeing the obsolescence of their job. What could they do? They could just give up, throw up their hands, and then say, well, I'm going to be out of a job. Or they could begin looking to be retrained in a different area. Obviously, perhaps they should have done that months or a year or two before. Because most of these things that are out there, you can see by looking at the horizon before they get to you and your company and impact your company. There are on occasion, things that just waff in out of the blue. It's called disruptive technology, and they will disrupt and unsettle the industry. And the people that bring that disruptive technology to the market space reap the benefits for years of it because the competitors are out there trying to catch back up, right? So you got to be looking for new developments and global trends so that you can keep your skill sets sharp and current and needed, and your companies can fend off those threats by doing similar things. Okay, let's go to number 6. Number 6 is seek to understand what jobs are phasing in and what jobs are phasing out. And you look back, I can remember going to the bank in the 70s, and there were lots of tellers working in the bank. In the late 70s, early 80s, we all started seeing these ATMs around on the street corners, and you go back into the bank and there was 1 or 2. Now, if you go into most banks, you have to look very closely to find the teller because there's 1 or 2, tops 3 if it's a large bank. So there's not as big a demand for people to work as tellers. Same thing with the travel industry. Most people would call the travel department, then most people would call the travel agency, and now they make their own travel arrangements on the computer. There was change coming, and many people didn't prepare for that change and found themselves without the skills necessary to keep them employed. So you always want to be looking at what jobs are phasing in and what jobs are phasing out, and you always want to be reinventing yourself. You can't say, I've reinvented myself, I've received the training, I'm done, I have arrived. And again, I spoke of this in a previous episode. It's not the fact that you have arrived. It's the fact that practicing lifelong learning and gaining new skills, you have to continually be arriving to stay relevant to your companies in order to stay employed. So by looking at the horizon and looking at what's coming and what's kind of phasing out, you can kind of guide yourself in terms of informal training or more formal training so that you're prepared and ready for that future state. Number 7, become nimble and adaptable. That would be agile, right? By anticipating the impacts of change and act accordingly. Now, if we are nimble and agile and we anticipate the impacts of change, but we don't act accordingly, we're going to be without a job. We're going to be out of business as a company because we're going to be outcompeted by other people taking the jobs or other companies taking the business away from us. So it's not enough to be nimble and adaptable. You have to think critically and meet the impact of change straight on and act accordingly by creating a plan that identifies the steps that you need to take and how to overcome the threats to that process or that plan that you put in place. So number 7 is that we cannot sit back and say, we've arrived. We have to actively engage in the management of our career, our job, and our company. You know, the entire time I worked out in industry, most of it spent in the defense and aerospace, I said, that company is my company. The company I worked for was my company. I was an owner in the company. And I really was, because when you contribute to your 401k, the company's matching your contributions typically in company stock. But even if they weren't, I said to myself, that that company is my company. As long as that company was doing well, I would be doing well. So that's the reason why it's important to be agile, by anticipating the impacts of change and acting accordingly. Build a plan, identify the threats, take mitigation steps against those threats, and act accordingly and make the plan happen. And you see, if you do that, you're going to get ready to future-proof. You're not quite there yet, but I have one more thing to say right here. By staying ready to future-proof your career, you repeat steps 1 through 7. Why? Because Heraclitus said what? Change is constant. So you're always arriving just in time to meet the demand, to meet the need, to meet the challenge of the job, so that you can best take care of your family. Because really, what's it all about? If you don't take care of your family, then there's nothing else that you could do to be as successful as just simply doing that. Okay, my friend, let's look and see what's coming up in the next episode. This would be Future-Proofing Your Career, Part 2, Becoming and Being Prepared. Okay, and we'll go through another 6 or 7 steps that you can do to continually get ready to meet the demand and future-proof your career. And with that, my friends, you take care of yourself, be careful out there, and please know this: you're always on my mind. All the best.